Okay, so I think we are live now. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of India FinTech Forum, I, Rini Kumar, welcome you all and to this online discussion on navigating the fintech landscape in Hong Kong. So, before we start with the session, there are a few points to note. The attendees can, enter their names and then post their questions on the webinar screen in ask a question panel. Mr. King will take up your questions on your behalf and take it up with the speakers. The webinar will be recorded and published on India FinTech Forum's YouTube channel. The Zoom meeting details will be shared on the webinar page, the one that you are seeing right now, post the panel discussion. So it's a pleasure for me to invite all the speakers for this panel. So our moderator for today is Mr. King Leung, who is the head of FinTech at Invest Hong Kong. We have Mr. Syed Mushir Ahmed, who is the founder and managing director of FinStep Asia. We have Mr. Vivek Mohindra, co-founder and responsible officer at Crystal.ai. And we have Ms. Yosha Gupta, founder and CEO of Memeraki. So with that, I invite Mr. King to start with his presentation and take the discussion forward. Over to you, Mr. King.
Okay. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Now, first of all, before I go into a bit more details about the Hong Kong fintech ecosystem, I want to express my gratitude and my special thanks to our good friend Mushir, who has been, in a way, playing the role of Invest Hong Kong, shuttling between India and Hong Kong, trying to bring these two economies together, like tirelessly in the past few years. And oftentimes, I guess to be honest, I don't know nearly enough about the Indian market as Mushir. So that's why I oftentimes call him up late at night and try and pick his brain. And of course, I think as we've been learning more and more from Mushir and his other friends, I realized that actually the Indian market is just amazing. Considering the fact that I think the numerous reports from the EY, the Consumer FinTech Adoption Study, India ranked #2 in the world in terms of consumer adoption in FinTech. And there's another study in which I picked up that the FinTech investment into the FinTech sector in India last year, 2019, was worth somewhere around, $3.7 billion US dollar. And that actually surpassed China, which has been grabbing a lot of the Western media attention. So that's why I think this is, as far as we're concerned, is the best kept secret from the Hong Kong corporates in terms of all these amazing developments in India. At the same time, we feel that at Invest Hong Kong, we have the responsibility to really also sort of make the bridge to reach out to folks like yourself in the Indian fintech ecosystem, so that to give you a sense a bit more about what's happening in Hong Kong. And also, again, we also got a few friends, from Bashir, Vivek, and Yosha, who are very familiar on both sides, so that we feel that today we can hopefully give you a much better sense about what the opportunities are in Hong Kong. So without further ado, perhaps we'll just jump into some factual information just to set the scene. Now, again, Hong Kong is not huge. After all, we only have a 7.5 million population. Because of the enormous size of the financial sector, we do have a pretty nice run in the past couple of years, from like 600 plus fintech companies, to I think the fact that 76% of the fintech companies in Hong Kong operates in the B2B space. So this would be something that should keep an eye on. Now, in terms of the size of the market, simply because of the fact that Hong Kong is a global financial center, we got like 160 plus banks, 160 plus insurance companies, almost 800 wealth management firms. So in a way, you can just look at the sheer size of the B2B market. That I think, particularly for those of you who are engaging in the B2B fintechs, so definitely Hong Kong is a good place for you. And more specifically, if you look at the number of these firms that have the regional headquarters in Hong Kong, which is a pretty significant percentage. And I think in a way you can think of it of using Hong Kong as a base to enter the Asian market So once you pilot and do a POC in Hong Kong, and subsequently you can branch out to other parts of Asia Pacific. Of course, I think in recent year, there have been a lot of media coverage about the GBA for good reasons, because of the market size is quite sizable. 71 million people, 1.6 trillion US dollar. But more importantly, it's about this kind of like the captive capital because of the China, India China policy. But now with the opening up of the financial sector, so this is almost like once in a lifetime opportunity in which the mainland Chinese basically would now be able to, through the opening up of GBA, to get access to international capital. At the same time, for folks who are interested to buy into the Chinese assets, you can do that in the GBA and vice versa. So for the mainland Chinese living in GBA, you can also access the international financial products. So this is the trend that a lot of folks are now making bets and position themselves to take advantage of this imminent breakthrough. Now, this is a BC chart, and I don't want to get into the details, but it's fair to say that because Hong Kong has placed a very high premium in the developments of technology and fintech, so that's why from top to bottom, the company set up to R&D, hiring, business development, fundraising, overseas expansion. In every step of the way, when you enter into the Hong Kong market, chances are there will be a scheme or more than one schemes that will be useful for you in a way to give you the financial subsidies, in terms of hiring, the development, and so on. So this is a way to basically get you going when you first enter the market. So again, if you are interested, I'm happy to take up some questions or perhaps get connected via LinkedIn and emails. And we can basically send this information off to you. Now, I think the other thing that you probably come across from a lot of the media is the sheer size of capital fundraising in terms of IPOs. Now, on the left is the earlier stage, the seed, the Series A, Series B. So basically, the private capital fundraising amount to 1.5 billion US dollar over the past 6 years. So that is a pretty good number. Now, but I think the even more interesting part of it is that on the right-hand side, so as many of you may know, Hong Kong is the #1 IPO market in actually 7 of the past 11 years. And just on fintech fundraising alone, we have raised more than 10 billion US dollar just on fintechs. So of course, there will be the Ant Financial coming up soon. So that's going to bump up the number even more. Now, I guess the one thing I just want to quickly highlight is that when you enter a new market like Hong Kong, normally I would think that it's a bit difficult to navigate. But the one thing I would like to advise you is that you can basically just come to Invest Hong Kong, which is the fintech team that our team belongs to. So we are plugged into all the major stakeholders in what we call Hong Kong Inc. So from the association to the Cyberport, Science Park, which is the accelerators that can provide office space and also various kind of funding, the regulators, and so forth. So come talk to us, that we are able to point you to the right direction. And last but not least, just want to quickly highlight is that the Hong Kong FinTech Week is coming up. This year will be 100% virtual from the 2nd through the 6th of November. And you can see the website, fintechweek.hk, in the middle of this slide. So check it out. Basically, we have some basically subsidies from government too. They can offer to, I think, the first 100 or so startups for free. So I think that we are getting close to running out those quotas. I think we still have a few. So check it out to grab this advantage in a way to experience the local market in which we have the deal floor, that we can connect you with potential clients, we connect you with potential investors, you can talk to the regulators, and so forth. And plus, I think we have a lot of international renowned speakers that we're offering a lot of cutting edge thought leadership contents. And I think the number I can recall is we're going to have over 350 international grade, top-notch speakers at the Hong Kong FinTech Week. So come join us. Now, so with that, first of all, we have some contact information here. So in case you would like to take down some information to contact us and numerous colleagues like myself, my great colleague on my right-hand side, Max. And then we also have some colleagues in Mumbai that you see Ashish and Charlie. So come talk to us. Now, again, so this is, I just want to make it quick to just give you a flavor. And of course, I think you joined this webinar, not just here from me, but to hear from, I think, our distinguished speakers who really understand, the Hong Kong market as well as the Indian market. So with that, perhaps we can quickly move over to the next more exciting session. And that's the panel discussion. We have 3 distinguished speakers. All right. So now, so with that, I just like to again start with my good friend Mashia. That again, you've been going gangbusters, very active, all over the place, running your own consultancy, advising companies, the various go-to-market strategies. So you have seen a lot. Of course, of all these cases that you have been advising, can you think of like 1 or 2 examples that can really sort of let the audience get a feel about, I think, the Hong Kong market, use it to expand in Asia Pacific and so on. So perhaps I think that we can hear from Bashir. Say a few words.
Yeah, thank you so much, King. Very kind words. I think all the people on the panel are very experienced and have been helping build the ecosystem. Yosha and Vivek in particular have done a tremendous job on this, and I'm honored to be on the panel with them. With regards to examples of companies coming into Hong Kong and expanding, I think there are quite a few examples of companies coming from the US and Europe, whose first port of call used to be Hong Kong for their fintech expansion. So you've seen, for example, SoFi, which is a well-known wealth management and personal finance management company from US, has bought a Hong Kong robo-advisory firm, 8 Securities, and are expanding outward from here, right? That's one example, and this has happened in the last 3 to 6 months time, right? That's an example that during COVID as well this has happened. Other examples is to look at companies that are coming in the B2B space. We have seen quite a decent number of B2B companies in, say, the digital banking space and RegTech space from Ireland, from the US, from Canada as well, who have come in, and UK, of course, who have come in here to provide solutions for banks and insurers. There's a big demand in that space, and they've continued to grow the rest of their operations in Asia at the back of that.
Okay. So this is fabulous. Now, I guess I want to keep this discussion more dynamic, more snappy, if you will. I guess I would like to pick on brains of Vivek. Now, you are very famous and super active in the Hong Kong fintech ecosystem. Almost everybody knows you. Now, I guess when you sort of like think back, right, to the journey you've been embarking on, right? So obviously, I'm sure that there are ups and downs and whatnot. So can you share with the audience about your journey, right? When you are started out the crystal life to where you are today. Hey, Vivek, you are on mute. Can you unmute?
Sorry, sometimes I got that wrong. Thanks a lot for that introduction, King. But I do want to point out to some of the people watching from India that there is one very famous Vivek in Hong Kong. He's Vivek Mahubani, who's a comedian here and is extremely popular. And you can see him live, and you can see some of his YouTube videos. So I sometimes get reflected glory from the other Vivek. But anyway, so what I want to talk about today is, like, I'm going to talk, we started this company about 4 years ago. So I'm just going to take you guys through the experience that we've had in terms of setting it up. And maybe you can learn a few things from that. As King pointed out, Hong Kong seems to be more of a destination for B2B players, just because of the fact that there are a lot of regional headquarters here in terms of all the financial institutions, banks, funds, everybody has like a presence here. So from a B2B perspective, if you come to Hong Kong, you can I think within a 2-kilometer radius can kind of catch up with everybody, and you can get meetings relatively easier. We went the B2C route. So for B2C routes, it's a little bit more complicated because, obviously there's a licensing element involved. But before the licensing, there's just a setup involved, right? Setting up a company. The setting up of a company takes about 15 minutes, I think. I did it on a computer in 15 minutes from the minute we decided to set up a company, and we decided a name. So it was 15 minutes after that online. The licensing process takes a little bit longer. You have to have some background, some experience, etc., etc. So you do definitely need some skills there. And the fact that I had been working for foreign banks in Hong Kong for a long time before that, that kind of helped with that. Coming for the setup, which is common to whether you're a B2B player or a B2C player, there are, as King pointed out, there are a number of entities providing you support as well as government programs. He gave a slide with a lot of numbers there, but there's a lot of money available, right? We ourselves took advantage of the Cyberport scheme. So we got a free office at Cyberport, and we also qualified for the incubation program. It wasn't too difficult, let me tell you that much. I mean, compared to what people would think. So we got some money from Cyberport to pay partly employee salaries, some of the rentals, some advertising, some legal expenses, so it's almost $500,000 Hong Kong dollars. So the amount is not small, but we didn't take advantage of all the other schemes that King pointed out. But in the current year with the pandemic, we've obviously taken benefit of some of those employee support schemes, which, kind of takes care of some of the salaries and also some of the other benefits that we've got because of the, COVID-19 situation. The other benefits of some of these like HK, STP or Cyberport is, besides the office and the grants, they also kind of give you a lot of introductions to people. So, if you're a B2B player and you want to meet a lot of other B2B your potential clients, they do definitely organize a lot of events and give you access. So that's a little bit of information, and they also give you PR. I mean, we got some media coverage, etc. So those benefits are also there. Also, some help organize some meetings with VCs. We ourselves found a VC actually based in India, and a family office in Singapore. But they did help us and introduce us to a lot of VCs that are based in Hong Kong. They have events from time to time and so on and so forth. When running the company, Invest Hong Kong was quite useful, in terms of, again, promotional activities, marketing help, invitation to events. And for some of you who may need it, visas, they do help us out with the, visas. If you're in fintech and in technology, it's relatively, you're one of the priority sectors in Hong Kong, and therefore you can get a visa relatively easier. I think it's definitely easier than Singapore, I think, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one. So yeah, and then there's a lot of associations. Startup doing a startup is quite lonely. So you need a lot of things where you can go to events, where you can hang out with people who think similarly. The FinTech Association of Hong Kong is very active. They do a lot of events. They do a lot of teaching events where they get somebody popular or interesting to kind of speak. We ourselves are quite active in the Wealth Tech Committee in FinTech Association, and that one kind of enables us to catch up with like-minded folks as well as have a drink together. Well, not this year, but hopefully we had a lot of drinks in 2017 and 18, and I was definitely a bit more free than today. So now I'm looking forward to next year when some of the restrictions go away and we can have drinks with our folks in the FinTech Association. You have learning, and also there are actually a lot of Indian associations, interestingly enough, from the old colonial times, which are still existing in Hong Kong. Indian Association, and we recently started a Institute of Chartered Accountants Hong Kong chapter where I'm active in. So there are a lot of other these things which are also happening. The India Association is very old. There's like 3-4 of them which have been Indian Chamber of Commerce, I think from the early 1900s or something like that. So there's a lot of things which you can kind of do in terms of when you start a business here. But obviously the fact that all the clients are in a short, relatively small area kind of helps. I hope that kind of gives a picture of how we started and what we do in the Hong Kong ecosystem. But it's been a very pleasant experience so far.
Well, thanks a lot, Vivek. I mean, I guess we cannot tell this story any better than you. Obviously, this is much more authentic. It's on the ground. So this is fabulous. Now, at the same time, we like to sort of change gear to talk to Yosha, because again, you've been in Hong Kong for 12 years. So you know Hong Kong well. And you've been very resourceful too, because I realized that you started a company where you raise money from both Hong Kong and Silicon Valley. So in that sense, can you help to sort of share a little bit of experience from a sort of fundraising standpoint? So how that journey went?
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and Vivek and Mushir are obviously very esteemed panelists. But I mean, a lot of the experience Vivek mentioned, it's been quite similar. I guess, I mean, like I told you, I've been here for 12 years, and I think the whole startup scene has completely changed in those 12 years. When I first came here 12 years ago, I could count the number of startups on one hand, and obviously now it's 3,000 plus startups in Hong Kong. So obviously it's a very vibrant community now. In terms of my own startup, this is my previous startup. I mean, I had to shut down this one, and I'll share the experience for that as well. This was a cashback startup, and we incorporated actually in Singapore as the holding company, and Hong Kong as the consumer entity, and another entity in India as well. So I guess, yeah, we were definitely being very ambitious that we had a fairly complicated holding company structure, etc. And I think in hindsight, it was we didn't really need a Singapore holding company, to be honest. It's just a Hong Kong holding company would have been enough, because the whole idea was that we were raising seed money through convertible notes, which is harder for India. Like, you can't really raise money through convertible notes for an Indian entity, but as an Hong Kong entity, we could have easily done that. So yeah, in hindsight, I think setting up a whole Singapore holding company wasn't really essential, to be honest. But I think at that point of time, because the whole idea was that we'll become an Asia focused entity, we'll have presence in Indonesia as a cashback business as well, and of course in Hong Kong, and Singapore and Indonesia had treaties. So I think, yeah, it was a little too much pre-planning already, I would say, and wasn't required. Hong Kong definitely had enough benefits to just be situated out of Hong Kong. In terms of my experience, I think like Vivek mentioned, they took advantage of the Cyberport fund. So did we. I mean, we were lucky enough to be selected for Cyberport as well, and it's fairly substantial funding, right? It's not a tiny amount. It's good enough to set up a business and at least be able to run for at least the amount of time where you can see whether this business can become a scalable, profitable business or not. So that was really useful as well. And the actual fundraising, I mean, unlike Vivek's experience where he raised from India, their fintech raised from India, we actually raised from Hong Kong, from Vector Ventures, and from 500 startups in Silicon Valley. And I would say, like both Mushir and Vivek mentioned, that Hong Kong is really open to, you can message people, catch up, you can do cold calling. It doesn't have to be always through connections. People are very, very open to understanding what business you're trying to do. And I would say for Vector Ventures, this was interesting because they'd never invested in an Indian entity, in an India-focused consumer business before. So this was actually their first investment into an India business. But I think as long as your numbers are looking good, your week-on-week, month-over-month growth is looking good, and we had over 1 million users in India at that point of time already. So it was, at the end of the day, the scalability of the market looks so interesting that it made sense for them to invest, and it was pretty fast. As a convertible note, getting money is pretty quick, and there's no valuation required. It's a non-valued round, so it's all pretty quick. And I would say, I mean, because I've had the experience of shutting down businesses in each of these places as well, definitely I would say that Hong Kong actually makes, like Vivek said, it's very quick to start a company in Hong Kong. Thankfully, it's also quite seamless to be able to shut down something in Hong Kong, because honestly, shutting down a business in India and Singapore, it's complicated. And I would say Hong Kong is definitely much more seamless, and hopefully it doesn't come to that for too many people. But as an experience, it's important, because there's a lot of money which goes into shutting down a business as well, honestly. So yeah, I mean, that's my 2 cents for raising and shutting down as well.
Well, I think this is a great insight, Yosha, to be honest. I was on a panel like 2 nights ago with some folks in Berlin. So there was this gentleman from, from Zurich, actually, Switzerland. He was talking about his own experience in Switzerland, in Shanghai, and Hong Kong. And actually from his own sharing and now with yours, I think that further hit home, right? Something that we live in Hong Kong for a long time, take for granted. Now, of course, when we look at a lot of these government brochure, right? Oh, it's a freest market in the world, easy to do business. It's almost like, it's like empty words, right? Sometimes, well, what does it all mean, right? But again, just now the story you just shared really put it in perspective. So thanks for sharing that story. Now, I guess I want to go back to Mushir now. Now, so obviously you are super knowledgeable. I mean, in a local market in India, every time I heard you speak, I learned something new. I mean, this is true. I mean, I'm not just trying to be polite. Now, so can you share with us? So obviously there's so many different segments, right, in fintech. So from your perspective, if you were to give some advice, right, to the folks now listening to this call in India, so what are the segments do you feel that the Indian fintechs should really look seriously into in the Hong Kong market?
Thanks, King. I think that the key element as when we're looking at Hong Kong is to look at the B2B market. Definitely a core for Indian companies who want to come in. As a statistic, about 97% or 96% of all Indian founders want to go overseas from the time they have set up a company, with 30% of them setting up their company to be a global target from day one, right? So there is a lot of interest, and I think B2B Indian fintech are definitely growing. So I would pick three areas, as I earlier alluded to, but number one would be KYC on digital onboarding. So the RegTech companies, I think, with a lot of Indian companies being strong in technology, that's one space that they can definitely look at. Second space is on the blockchain side, not necessarily crypto, but Hong Kong has become a very strong market for the digital asset world, and Indian blockchain developers are quite strong, and that could be very useful for companies here, ranging from large corporates to even fintech startups looking for technology solutions in the blockchain space. Number three would be on insurtech. That's another space that is growing in Hong Kong, and with India's insurtech scene also booming, and many insurtechs coming through there, this is another space that is therefore disruption overall, right? In addition to that, in general, I think technology services where they can be provided are useful. A couple of pointers just generally to keep in mind is, as open as Hong Kong's ecosystem is for people from overseas, visas, etc. I think definitely, Yosha, I think Hong Kong is probably the easiest in some senses for a streamlined process for visas, etc. And if you qualify, and you get it through comfortably, and the immigration department is quite considerate to your applications, if they're all legitimate applications, right? So you can keep that in mind. But if you're looking to develop any technologies, you also need and solutions in Hong Kong, you will need to be mindful about language requirements. With a huge number of multinationals here, they're not just catering to the Hong Kong market or just in English. It could also be a case of these companies wanting to build out products in Southeast Asia, mainland China, East Asia as well. So, which then brings in with the need to have a multilingual setup. So, one element that startups will have to remember is the capability to go multilingual when they're going B2B.
Yeah, thanks for these comments, Shia. I just want to echo what you just said. So first of all, at Invest Hong Kong, we do track the companies that are setting up in Hong Kong in various segments. And interestingly, from the numbers from the last 2 years, the largest and fastest growing segment is actually blockchain related companies in various applications across fintech. Now, the other one, the comment would be around insurtech, because I've been trying to talk to a lot of the corporate folks to try to get a better sense about the actual demand from the major insurers. And interestingly, I just want to quote one conversation with the chief digital officer of a major insurer. Essentially, I've been asking her, which is very active, by the way. And I said, hey, would you be interested for us to introduce you to some insurtechs to be considered? And she said, you know what, King, we have already spent a couple months. So we talked to every single insurtech in Hong Kong already. I said, really? And she said, hey, you guys at Invest Hong Kong, you guys should probably work harder to bring us more choices. Because it's true, because given the size of the enormous insurance market, the annual premium of Hong Kong insurance market is over 500 billion Hong Kong dollars. So that's roughly 60 plus US billion, $60 billion US dollar plus. So it's a pretty sizable market in its own right. Yet the number of insurtech serving those companies by comparison is not enough. So that's why right now it's still in a relatively early stage. So more choices with better, and plus I think you can definitely create your own niche if you have something special to offer. Now, so with that, I want to quickly change gear back to another great topic, wealth tech. Because again, Vivek has been doing this for a good number of years. And we had this chat the other day about the enormous amounts of private wealth in India, in which the folks are allowed to invest overseas. So given the enormous size of the wealth tech or wealth management market in Hong Kong, so where do you see the opportunities lie?
Yeah, thanks. I'll unmute it first this time. So yeah, thanks, King. Yeah, of course, Hong Kong is definitely known as as one of the centers. It's a global financial center, and therefore it's known for the services it provides for managing your wealth and managing your investments. And that is one of the things that at Crystal, that's what we focus on, and that's the one. That's the background. That's my personal background also. And there's a variety of reasons why Hong Kong became a financial center. Obviously the legal and the jurisdiction, the regulators. So people generally are very comfortable holding and managing their assets here. Also, of course, using Hong Kong, you can obviously invest globally. So you can do if you want to invest in the US markets and European markets and Latin American markets, you can do that. And that's something, again, at Crystal, that's what we provide. We provide you the ability to invest globally, sitting in Hong Kong with a very sharp and smart regulator watching over us, so that your money is safe, right? So it gives comfort to a lot of people. So that's one of the flows that we're trying to intermediate is, people looking from, whether they are from India looking to diversify into global markets, or whether they are from China and looking to go diversify again into global markets, right? So that is the one of the services we provide. And for that reason, Hong Kong is a center of it. The Hong Kong Exchange, as King pointed out earlier, has been one of the leading IPO exchanges globally. In fact, Shenzhen has recently become huge and is leading in terms of the volumes traded there. And the Hong Kong Exchange and Shenzhen and some of these exchanges offer the latest technology companies. One of the problems that Indian stock markets have is that there hasn't been any technology company that has been listed there. I know that Reliance is pretending to be a technology company, but it's not really a technology company. The only one I can think of is InvestHK. But here, Ant is going to list probably in a couple of, Ant Financial is going to list in a couple of weeks. So you can definitely invest in some technology companies here. And also through the Connect, you can invest in Shenzhen and in Shanghai stock markets. And also on our platform, actually, we also offer a lot of ways to invest into India. So we're not just catering for Indians to invest offshore, but we're also catering for offshore investors to invest into India. And we curate a lot of products specifically for investors looking to access India. So it's both ways, right? The flows are always both ways, from one to the other. And it's obviously important for diversification point of view. You don't want to have, if you're sitting in India, you don't want all your money in India. Right now going very well. In the future, well, you have to be careful and do this. And also, you can kind of interact, because it's a financial center. You kind of get to know where the money is going, where the flows are, what is the right area to invest in, and so on and so forth. And that's another reason why it makes sense to be in Hong Kong, especially from the investment point of view. It's an expensive. One thing we didn't cover earlier, between Yosha and myself was, it is definitely an expensive location, right? So Hong Kong is not cheap to start a business, to live, to go out for a drink. It's all these are quite expensive. So for that reason, we do keep a lot of staff in India also to keep our expenses under control. So you have to be, you have to balance the two. You have to make sure that the people who are generating business are relevant, are based in Hong Kong, and the people who are doing some of the other activities, which maybe not directly involved with talking to either investors or business clients, etc., can be kept somewhere else in a cheaper location. So just wanted to point out. There was a question I saw about taxation. Hong Kong is very tax friendly. Okay, not only in terms of the taxation level, but also in terms of the trouble from the taxation authorities. You don't really get much, and you can negotiate with them a little bit. Thanks.
Great. Now, I guess obviously a lot of folks are, well, particularly the wealth management space, have been happily trading on the stock connects, right, the bond connects and whatnot. So can you comment a little bit about the Greater China, the GBA, the Greater Bay Area opportunity when it comes to wealth management?
Is that for you, Yosha, or is that for me?
How about for you first? Vivek,
okay, fine.
Then we'll go to
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of flows of the Chinese people investing into Hong Kong stock market, primarily because it's cheaper to a certain extent compared to the onshore listings. now the GBA has not taken off. If we look at my own personal experience, last year I went to Futian and Shenzhen about 4 times. It hasn't taken off to the extent that we thought it would take off because of this COVID related issues and some of the other related issues. So it's been a bit of a slowdown. There were a couple of policies relating to wealth management stuff. Hong Kong fund managers being able to offer wealth management solutions to mainland, especially in the GBA areas, and so on. So King, from that perspective, I think it's a little bit of delay, but obviously there's valid reasons for some of these delays because of whatever has been happening here in the last 6 to 12 months, and we are quite hopeful it will sort out in the next 6 to 12 months. But of course, the trading through the exchanges is very easy. It's very simple, and we ourselves have been doing it. We've been trading China A shares quite regularly and without any problem whatsoever. But some of the other initiatives related to Wealth Connect, fund management solutions being offered, those have been delayed a bit.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Vivek. Now, I want to pick on Yosha's brain because I think you have some very interesting venture going on now, which is investing or managing what the heritage Indian arts. Now, I think we had a chat the other day, which I think is going to be interesting to share with the audience too, because obviously in Hong Kong, for those of you who are not familiar with the SFC, so the SFC is the regulator, basically that oversees the asset management sector. And last year, November, at the FinTech Week, they made the announcement that they will be offering a crypto exchange license. So recently, one company called BC Group, and underneath the crypto exchange called OSL, they received the approval in principle from SFC. So that could be the first licensed crypto exchange in Hong Kong. So obviously, there's enormous interest from all over the world about getting a license, and then you can use that to trade tokens on different kinds of securities and property, IP, and so on. Now, so I guess I'd like to go back to Yosha. So what do you think, right? So now you are dealing with this very unique and unique assets. So do you see any connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, my current startup, Miraki, it's focused on art, and as you mentioned, on heritage art. Creating like contemporary products using heritage art from Indian artists, and even retailing paintings from heritage Indian artists who are based across India. So of course this the whole idea of STOs holds a lot of promise, but it's something we haven't explored too much just yet, because our paintings the paintings from our artists are not that expensive right now. Hopefully we will be looking at artists whose paintings will be much more expensive, but overall it holds a lot of promise, to be honest, because the whole world of investing in art it's been quite limited to a certain segment of people, of course, who can afford to buy one full painting. But some of these expensive paintings by expensive artists are obviously unaffordable and can only be accessed through curators and galleries. So the idea of it being an asset and a fractionalized asset, it's obviously really interesting, and it democratizes the whole process of being able to invest in art. So the fact that SFC is slowly opening up to that idea and is allowing an exchange and digital assets can be traded, it's really interesting. Obviously it's a start because it's still limited to professional investors, but like Vivek mentioned, in Hong Kong there's potentially 500,000 plus professional investors potentially. So it's definitely a great start. I think what I'm really excited about in the whole application of blockchain to art is also the idea of the provenance, and how supply chain can be tracked really effectively, how fake paintings and forgeries can be avoided in the art world, and that's something which is being explored to a great length by all the big auctioneers in the world like Christie's and Sotheby's as well. But personally, to my own business, the idea that I'm most excited about is the extension of blockchain to the idea of financial inclusion. Because currently, and that's the mission of our business at the end of the day, our startup is very focused on creating sustainable livelihoods for artisans and artists across India. And if you think of it, like right now we work with, let's say, 150 artists. The supply chain is complicated, but very soon we're doing a collaboration where this number of artists is actually going to increase to 5,000 artists. and artisans. And imagine, like, slowly when we keep expanding, it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands at some point as well. And that's when the application of being able to use blockchain at scale and tracking the whole supply chain, and even making sure that payments and all can happen at a nominal transactional cost. Because right now this is all focused in India, but our ambition is to be able to expand to artisan and artist groups in different parts of Asia as well, all the heritage artists and artisan groups. So then imagine the complications in the whole supply chain, that we're looking at artisan artist groups across different countries. How do we actually track the whole supply chain? How do we actually make sure payments are efficient? And that's where I'm excited about the potential of blockchain for us.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a very exciting space, because obviously when the OSL of the world finally got the full approval, as opposed to approval in principle, then it's going to set up in another wave of activities. Right? Because obviously you have the exchange, but you still need to have the assets to be traded on the exchange. So that will actually help the primary market as well. Now, I guess I want to change gear to back to Mushi again. Now, so you and Yosha co-founded the India FinTech, which is a community initiative in Hong Kong that in a way helped to sort of shine spotlights on the Indian startups. So can you share a little bit about the experience and what the audience can learn from?
Thanks. I think the idea for India Tech Hong Kong came about when when I started participating in the Hong Kong fintech scene, and there were not too many Indians in there. And as you rightly mentioned, King, on the other hand, not many people were very aware about the Indian fintech scene. When UPI, Aadhar, and all of that was getting built up, and so Yosha and I, along with a few others, including Pratish, Renu, Chandan, and Saisuda, started the community as an initiative to bridge the startup ecosystem between Hong Kong, India, and southern China. Right. Our primary goal is to enable Indian startup companies who are looking to get an exposure here, but more so, it's an educational process of making people on both sides understand the scope and scale of the markets. Right. So we've had a host of events where we've done pitch competitions over the last 3 years, where in total we had about 1,000 participants from India for our pitch competitions over 2 years. We've had hackathons. We'll be having our next hackathon for students here in Hong Kong and India in early November. Vivek has been kindly one of the mentors for that as well. And we also do seminars and work on the topic, right? The learnings for when I'm interacting with a lot of Indian companies is, I think there are two main things Indian companies need to understand about the Hong Kong market, right? One is culture, right? Over 90% of India's technology companies are catering to the US or the West. And there the culture is a very different way than in Hong Kong. So you need to be very sensitive to the fact that you can't rush people or rush into things, right? So you have to take your time, and building trust and confidence is very important, be it an investor or be it a potential client. They both tend to have similar needs and similar behavior. So you can't rush into it. You can't rush for or expect consultants or others to be able to do something magically, right? That's number one. Number two is evaluating the fact that with Hong Kong being a very expensive place, what is your strategy to come on board, right? In the sense that there is value when you strike it, but you have to find the balance in terms of not being, finding the right partners is important in Hong Kong, and you need to keep a budget for that. And it's a lot more cheaper than hiring somebody full time, but having those right partners will be important for you to get the right breaks from Invest Hong Kong to what we do at FinTech Asia. It's I think an important element, and there are others who also do the same thing, but these are lessons very important for Indian fintechs. Number three is there is capital that is available in Hong Kong for companies, besides looking at the rules that come attached with it, but a lot of that capital is for Series B onwards, right? Mature companies who have done well tend to be the ones that get good capital. Pre-Series A is much tougher. Some companies who are between Series A and Series B and have good traction may get investment as well. But I guess that's just a element, because people have to be aware that India for Hong Kong, mainland Chinese investors is still something that they're exploring and understanding, right? So they don't, for lack of a better word, have a trust in the ecosystem or understanding of the ecosystem. So the amounts that they're going to invest is going to be is going to be lesser in the earlier stages. As you show more maturity, you're likely to attract more investment at that stage.
So the discussion is really insightful. King, we have some questions from the audience. If you can just look at your chat section, a few of them.
Sure. Yes. Well, I think Vivek just briefly touched on the tax question, and I think the only thing I can add is that the corporate tax in Hong Kong is 16.5%, but then we have a new kind of arrangement. I think it was like over a year or 2 years ago, in which for the first 2 million of profits, actually the tax rate is only half, so 8.25%. So in a nutshell, actually we've done the comparison. Hong Kong, I mean, if you add up all the other taxes, I mean, this is by far the most tax efficient, low tax market you can find on the planet. So I think tax, to be honest, this is not really an issue. Now, it's just super low. Now, the second question I can see is that does Hong Kong have any funding available for fintech startups? Well, perhaps I can comment a few things, and then perhaps going back to the Vivek and Yosha or Bashir from their experience. First of all, there are tons of funding. Okay. Now, actually, we did the math, and we added them up. So hey, Max, you said I think it's like 39 billion, right? Yeah. So we add up all the funds that in which our fintech companies are eligible. Okay, are applicable to fintechs, and the number came out to be 39 billion US dollar. Okay, of funding of different nature. I mean, it's a lot, right? Now, but the thing is that what are the ones that are more so easily accessible? So perhaps maybe Vivek and Yosha, you want to say a few words? Well, what are the ones that are more easily accessible?
I mean, I can quickly add, like Vivek and I both mentioned that we had access to the Cyberport funding. While we were based, I mean, I was based here, so of course it was easier, but I do know of enough, other startups as well who were not even based in Hong Kong and got access to that easily enough. And, they don't even have to visit. They can actually be pitching virtually as well and get access to it. So I would say that getting access to all the sources of funding that you mentioned, which is the grants actually, right? It's not even equity funding. It's pretty easy. And Vivek mentioned the same thing as well. And yeah, investor funding, I touched upon that a little bit already. So I'll let Vivek and Mushir comment.
Yeah, I think Cyberport is, I think they're super friendly in terms of not just funding, but also in terms, and yeah, please note, it is a grant. So it's not like normally everywhere, they ask for some shares or something in return. So this one is a one-off. It's a percentage of the expenses. I'm very bullish, and I can only say good things. I just been appointed one of the mentors at the Cyberport incubation program. So I'll be quite active with some of the startups there. Personally, so if there are any problems people face, they can kind of raise it to me, and I will definitely take it to the management there and see what the problem is. But I think it's a great scheme, and it's a great location. I love the Cyberport place also. Lots of greenery, and not like Hong Kong where it looks all like whatever you can see behind King's. Cyberport is very green, overlooking the sea with a nice walk and park. So it's not all just concrete everywhere.
Yeah, I guess just sorry, Mushir, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, I think Cyberport is well recognized as the fintech hub for Hong Kong, but let's not forget that there are quite a few funding schemes that now the government has launched, depending on if you're a technology firm, right? You have quite a few other ways of getting funding. The key for you is to register in Hong Kong, and as Vivek said, 15 minutes to do it online, a few days to get going, very seamless process. Getting a bank account will take a little more time if you're not based in Hong Kong, but other than that, you can use other alternatives for bank accounts like Neat, etc. But on the funding side, let's also remember that there is the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, right? They are more focused on deep tech startups, but if you are startups with more than 50% of your focus on technology, that's another space. And both of these companies, Science Park and Cyberport, have incubation programs. But getting a tenancy there as well is very useful for you to apply for a range of government funding, from hiring interns for R&D, right, which goes up to 30,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, roughly 4,000 US a month for funding from there as well. So you do have those opportunities once you qualify. So,
yeah, the one thing I want to add is on two areas. Now, one is on the living costs. Because I think as several speakers just mentioned, yes, Hong Kong is expensive, At the same time, the Hong Kong Science Park, for example, they have a new initiative called InnoCell. So actually, I asked them to come up with a better name, but anyway, so they are offering accommodation. Basically, I think it's roughly around 20 square meter space, so about 200 square foot. Essentially, it's a sort of a nice like dormitory, but high-tech dormitory look that is basically on the campus of Science Park in Sha Tin, which is a suburb of Hong Kong. And the monthly rental cost is 5,000 Hong Kong. So that's roughly what, 600 US dollar per month, which is by Hong Kong standard is not too bad. It's actually pretty good, right? So I think the government recognized this and have been offering different help, such as the InnoCell program at Science Park. Now, the other aspect about lowering the cost is that we also have a funding scheme in which the government would subsidize the salary of your technology development staff. And the monthly salary subsidy is roughly around like 30,000 Hong Kong. So this is roughly around what, like 4,000 US, if you will, to yeah, that's right, 3,000 to 4,000 US dollar. So that is going to be a big chunk of the salary being subsidized by Hong Kong governments for the first, I think, 3 headcounts. So basically, there are different things that can really lower your initial setup cost. Okay, now, so perhaps again, I'm also sensitive of time. Let me just pick up another question here. Now, there seems to be some interest around blockchain. So perhaps we can talk a little bit, let's see. Yeah, in the examples of startups active in blockchain space, asset tokenization, and so on. Actually, there are just quite a lot, from the InsurTech in providing the access of patients' information, for the clinic, to the insurer, and of course, to make it easier for claim process. So there are use cases like that. There are also some blockchain companies that are actively involved in the more like a system integrator kind of space. They do sometimes custom developments. There are companies like that. Now, at the same time, there are actually quite a lot of interests around like trade finance, because obviously Hong Kong being a traditional trading ports, and a lot of import exports going through Hong Kong. So trade finance running on blockchain platforms are also some developments. They are pretty, I guess, extensive across the logistics sector. So I think the list can go on. I don't know whether Bashir or Yosha, you guys have any other comments about blockchain applications.
I think looking at areas like custody, digital asset custody is something that's also growing from a digital asset space perspective, crypto trading as well. So RegTech on that, as or tools in general for cryptocurrency trading as well, is something that is definitely growing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add, I guess, like you said, King, Hong Kong is a fairly active blockchain community overall. And I'd love to give a shout out to, it actually has one of the only news media sort of dedicated to blockchain as well, which is Forecast News, also started by a female founder. And I think that's great because they cover blockchain news across the world as well. So it's a single source of getting all your information about, blockchain in one place as well. And yeah.
Yeah, well, now the other thing I just want to pick up, hopefully one more before our time runs out for this Q&A, and that is on the compliance aspect. I think that Vivek would be in the best position to comment on that, and I think that's question number 5.
Yeah, I think so. Is it easy to operate from a compliance perspective? Well, this is a bit of balance, right? So if it's too easy, then then the jurisdiction will not be considered strong enough, right? And if they make it too difficult, then you can't do any business. So yeah, but obviously, so it's kind of suitable. We deal with the Indian and NRI clients, and it's not like you don't have to fulfill any requirements. You definitely have to fulfill more requirements. We also licensed in India, and we also licensed in Singapore, for example. So in each of these jurisdictions, we still have to meet certain requirements. And I think Hong Kong is neither too tough or neither too easy. It's kind of in the middle, and If you want to do B2C business, yes, you definitely have to cross the T's and dot the I's, and you have to go through that the process. And the the SFC, which is the regulator for us, definitely does ask a lot of questions. So you should be ready for that. But if you plan to get licensed and regulated here, then you definitely need some people with experience of working in Hong Kong before. While they will agree to some experience in other jurisdictions, but they will want some local experience also if you want to get licensed here.
Yeah, just a quick comments to add on to Vivek's comments. Now, first of all, on my job, actually, I'm very privileged to have a chance to travel internationally. Okay. Now, and as I talk to folks from different parts of the world, and obviously fintech is a regulated business, so inevitably we talk about the regulators. And to my surprise, to my pleasant surprise, actually the Hong Kong regulators, the HMA, the SFC, I mean, these guys are like world class. They are really well respected internationally. So that's why, just from talking to people around the world, if you do get your license from Hong Kong, actually this is almost like a badge of honor or something. I mean, it is. I mean, the license in Hong Kong does mean something because of the respect that the Hong Kong regulators get internationally. Now, so I think that the time is almost running out. There's a question, one last question, just quickly comments. So have any of the digital banks launched yet? The answer is yes. Of the 8 licenses, 5 of them have gone live, and the other 3 are undergoing some tests and soft launches and so on. So yeah, this is getting exciting. In fact, I think Michelle has been showcasing your beautiful metallic debit card in your social media. So yes, actually, Michelle is a super user.
I'm just trying those out. I think this is exciting that the startups that are coming out of Hong Kong, the virtual banking is transforming the incumbents to do more. And I think there's more from that space, but this is something that's a trend across Asia. I want to just add very quickly on the compliance note. I think Hong Kong definitely, HKMA, SSC have been very progressive in the last couple of years in particular. But one element that if you're looking at licensing in Hong Kong or you're having a licensed product that falls into license, you can probably look at joining forces with a local financial institution, right? A licensed institution, and then coming and starting off, right? That could be one way to do it rather than jumping in to get a full license. Secondly, the regulators in Hong Kong, all 3 of them are part of the GFIN, which is the Global FinTech Innovation Network headed by FCA and has a host of regulators. They constantly are running accelerators and POC online, right? So applying for that will give you an opportunity to go through not just in Hong Kong, but other jurisdictions as well. And last one on that is that Hong Kong has sandboxes. So you may also look to enter that if you're looking at a license for Hong Kong.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Now, first of all, I see that our time is up. And I believe that my colleagues in Mumbai, Ashish, and also Charlie probably have a few words to say to the audience. So perhaps we can turn it to Ashish and Charlie. But in the meantime, I just want to express my sincere thanks to the great friends. I mean, Vivek, Bashir, and Yosha. So thank you so much for sharing your time and also great insights. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Right. So Charlie.
Hi, good afternoon to one and all. I would just like to thank the organizers of the webinar, India FinTech Forum, King, and our esteemed panelists, and most importantly, our participants for taking the time to attend this webinar. I'm really overwhelmed right now because I can see around 325 participants attending this webinar. So I can probably understand how interesting and engrossing the webinar is for the participants. So a quick introduction about myself. My name is Charlie Idikula. Mr. Ashish Mehta and myself manage the India office for Invest Hong Kong. Our offices are based in Mumbai. I would like to share a very inspiring quote by Albert Einstein, which I recently came across, which read, "In the middle of every difficulty lies an opportunity." The reason why I wanted to highlight this quote is that over the past few months, when the world is affected by the pandemic, we have been observing many startups, fintechs, and SMEs creating opportunities for themselves and growing in the market even during this challenging situation. With regards to fintech, we have been observing a major boom in the digital payment space, insurtech, cybersecurity, wealth tech, cryptocurrency, retail banking, and some other sectors as well. Hong Kong has always been an ideal place for fintech companies as it offers world-class business environment. There has been ease of doing business. It's got a very simplified taxation system, and most importantly, connecting to us, government initiatives and funding programs for startups and SMEs. Adding to this, Hong Kong's closer proximity to international markets and the Greater Bay Area makes it an ideal destination for investors. So we at Invest Hong Kong, we help companies in the planning, setup, launch, and expansion process. And our services are totally complimentary and confidential. So in that sense, you can feel free to reach out to us for any questions or any queries through email or phone. Our contact details are mentioned below. I will also connect with few of the participants along with some of our speakers after the webinar. And also in the coming weeks, I will have an introduction with all of the participants. Once again, thank you all. Thank you once again for all the support, and thank you for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all. And there are a lot of people joining in, and just I'll take another 2 minutes, and you can unmute yourself and ask the question to the panelists. So thank you all. Thank you speakers. Thank you King. Thank you Vivek, Yosha, and Syed. And thank you Charlie for sharing your insights. I thank all of those who are present here and for making this discussion so interesting and insightful. Last but not the least, I thank InvestHK for supporting this webinar. And going forward, if you would like to host any webinar, please do get in touch with us at info@indiafintech.com. With that, have a very nice week and stay safe. Thank you. And you can unmute yourself one by one and start the networking. Yeah? Thank you.